Captain Midnight.
This check, issued March 1st, 1938, is one of the most egregious pop culture tragedies of the 20th century. Made out to Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and misspelling both of their names, it was issued by the then small company of Detective Comics. They were paying for a few comics the pair had written and drew for DC. But scrawled near the top of the check is a note that would change their lives forever. Superman, $130. From this purchase would come one of the most recognizable characters of all time, whose imprint on American culture has only continued to grow, but in the process, leaving the two men who created him behind.
What are your superpowers again?
I'm rich.
The sad fact is, Siegel and Shuster are only the tip of the iceberg. There's some well-known examples, of course, like Bill Finger, who wasn't officially credited as the co-creator of Batman until 2015, 41 years after his death, despite the fact that Bob Kane's original Batman looked like this. And it wasn't until Bill Finger got involved, drew him a new costume, and gave him the name Bruce Wayne that he debuted looking like this in 1939. And of course there's Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, the artists and co-creators, or sole creators, depending on who you're talking to, of almost every character Marvel is making billions off of right now, who were never properly compensated.
Well, the characters represent a sort of a transcendent feeling that we all have inside us, that we could do better. We want to do better. We haven't time to do better. That we can be the people that we lionize.
Kirby died in 1994. And Ditko has practically become the J.D. Salinger of comics, only emerging from his Manhattan apartment every few decades to take a swipe at Stan Lee. In Ditko's lifetime, there has been 6 blockbuster movies based off his work, 5 Spider-Man movies, not including the upcoming one, and Doctor Strange. In the United States alone, these movies have made about $2.3 billion when adjusted for inflation. And that's not including the money made from the decades of television shows and merchandise based on the characters. Steve Ditko has not received a single check from any of this. I want to make clear though, the purpose of this video isn't to bury Stan Lee or even Bob Kane. The internet contains plenty of that already. The exploitation that comic creators faced weren't created by 2 individuals. They are created by the entire industry, and those forces are still around today. Take Bill Mantlo.
Oh, yeah.
You remember this guy? The one who everyone liked and probably sold a bazillion plush toys and action figures? He was created by Mantlo, who wrote for Marvel and DC, while also working as a public defender. In 1992, he was hit by a car in a hit-and-run that was never solved. It caused permanent brain damage, and since then he has required institutional care. For years, the Mantlo family depended on the donations of comic book fans and help from the Hero Initiative, a charity whose whole purpose is to help comic creators' healthcare-related financial problems, just because the family had to make sure they had enough money to pay for his nursing home. You know your industry's bad when that's necessary.
Hi, I'm Stan Lee, and I support the Hero Initiative because everyone deserves a golden age.
Thankfully, Mantlo's story seems to have a happy ending. After the attention drawn to Mantlo before the release of Guardians of the Galaxy, Marvel not only gave him an early screening of the film, according to his brother, they negotiated a payment plan which satisfied the family. Still, the fact remains that this guy made at least $5 million saying 3 words a bunch of different ways, while the creator of this guy had to depend on some potentially bad PR to make anything off the film. And unlike the star of Fast and Furious 8, Bill Mantlo actually needs the money.
Please listen carefully.
Less tragic, but still ridiculous, is the treatment of Len Wein. You may know him for creating Nightcrawler, Colossus, Swamp Thing, Amanda Waller, and, oh yeah, this guy. If you didn't know that, I wouldn't feel bad, since he rarely receives a credit in any of the film or TV versions of these characters. A few years ago, he revealed that he made more money off of the Lucius Fox character being in the Dark Knight films than he ever has off of Wolverine. And even though he's still a very active, consistently employed writer, and his work is being adapted in a million different ways, he's never been hired to write for any of the X-Men films. Instead, he's usually writing for cartoons like Ben 10 or Transformers. This isn't to say that Len Wein is complaining, because he's not. Judging by his Twitter feed, he's really enjoying himself. Wait, he's the creator of Wolverine and he's not even verified on Twitter? We Rate Dogs, an account that, surprise, rates dogs, gets a check mark, and this guy... See, this is what I'm talking about. The list goes on and on. Many, if not most of these guys have sued Marvel or DC in the past, and they always lose. And of course they do. After all, one of the companies they're fighting against is literally powerful enough to get copyright law changed multiple times. Keith Giffen, co-creator of the Justice League International, probably summed up working in comics the best in 2014 when he said, "If you can help it, don't be a creator. Be the exploiter. They get rich. You never will." It all comes back to Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who, by the 1970s, had spent most of their savings on legal fees suing DC over not getting paid for Superboy, among a few dozen other things. Siegel could barely find work and was getting by on about $7,000 a year, while Shuster, who was legally blind by that point, may have been struggling even worse. Things changed in 1975, though, due to the upcoming release of Superman the movie. Siegel and Shuster suddenly became a potential PR embarrassment, and DC, fearing bad publicity, agreed to give them each $30,000 a year for the rest of their lives, as well as finally giving them a byline as the creators of Superman. It wasn't nothing, but considering Superman the movie alone grossed $134 million, or around $502 million adjusted for inflation, it was a pretty sad sum. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster never wrote another Superman story after the 1940s. Shuster died in 1992, and Siegel followed in 1996. Neither death received a mention in the editorial pages of the Superman comics they had launched. Superman, though not as lucrative these days as fellow superheroes like Batman and Spider-Man, still manages to pull in about $277 million a year in merchandising alone, and for better or worse, remains a key component in DC's billion-dollar grossing film universe. But maybe you have no sympathy for Jerry Siegel or Joe Shuster. At the end of the day, they did sign over the copyright to their character. But this check set a trend. And while these days the industry has creator-owned publishing companies like Image and Avatar, providing an alternative way to get comics in the hands of readers while keeping the rights in the hands of the creators, for the better part of a century, the men and women who worked in comics were exploited and underpaid, while the characters they dreamt up became household names. The rise of the internet has given people new outlets to create in, but those opportunities also make it essential for creators to learn from the past and make sure its mistakes aren't repeated. And when you buy a new Superman comic, check out his latest movie or video game, or maybe just passing by in a store. Remember that it wasn't DC Comics, the publishing unit of DC Entertainment, a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, a division of Time Warner, who created him. It was Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two friends from Cleveland with a little ink, a little talent, and an idea.
Here's here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes, too, for every member of Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. Just have Mother or Dad drive you over to your Skelly service station and tell your Skelly man you want to join the new 1940 Flight Patrol. He'll give you your official application card right away, and he'll send right in to...